Undercover CEO disguises himself as homeless to test a bank. You won't believe what happens at the end. Alan Fairchild was not the typical CEO most people imagine. He didn't like flashy suits or gold watches. He preferred blending into the crowd and observing people. That's how he built his empire, by paying attention to everyday individuals, hearing their needs, and finding creative ways to meet them. He spent countless late nights reading complaints on the bank's website. Some customers loved the service, but others spoke of poor treatment, unnecessary fees, and humiliating encounters. He saw a pattern in these stories. Low-income customers and those going through hard times often received the worst treatment. It troubled him deeply. Alan wondered, did my bank's culture change behind my back? He decided it was time to see for himself, but instead of calling a meeting or sending out memos, Alan crafted a daring plan. He would go undercover as a homeless man to test how his bank treated people who seemed to have nothing. The very next morning, he rummaged through an old chest in his attic for worn-out clothes from his college days. He walked 3 blocks to the main Towering Heights branch. The massive glass doors loomed ahead, framed by polished metal. Yet Alan's heart pounded with each step. As soon as he entered, the hush of the lobby swallowed him. Warm, well-dressed customers lounged on plush chairs, checking their phones or sipping coffee in to-go cups. A security guard quickly locked eyes on him. "May I help you?" the guard asked, voice tense, as if anticipating trouble. Alan summoned a timid smile. "I'd like to open an account," he said softly. He pulled a crumpled $20 bill from his pocket. "I don't have much, but it's a start." The guard looked him up and down, making no effort to hide his skepticism. "Right," he drawled, "lines over there." He pointed to a service counter at the far side of the lobby. Alan shuffled across the gleaming marble floors. A young teller named Serena peered at him with uncertainty. Still, she forced a polite smile. "Hi there," she began, scanning his rumpled clothes. "How can I help you today?" "I want to open a checking account," Alan repeated, placing his single $20 bill on the counter. I've been out of work for a while," he added, giving a faint shrug. Serena's expression wavered. "Do you have a photo ID?" Alan handed over a dog-eared driver's license. The address was from years ago when he lived in a modest apartment in another city. She examined it warily, glancing between the ID and his face. Before she could respond, a tall, suit-clad man appeared behind her. His crisp name tag read Douglas, branch manager. "What's going on?" Douglas asked brusquely. Serena explained the situation. Douglas snatched the ID and glared at Alan's battered clothes. "We have minimum deposit requirements," he snapped, voice loud enough for other customers to hear. "Sir, do you even have enough funds? Our basic checking needs at least $100. Alan swallowed hard. "I only have 20 now," he admitted, "but I can deposit more later." Douglas exhaled sharply. "That won't work. If you don't have the minimum deposit, there's nothing we can do." He shot the teller a glance that said, "Get rid of him." Feeling his cheeks burn, Alan tried once more. "Is there no workaround?" he asked quietly. "I need a bank account to apply for a job." The manager's eyes narrowed. "I suggest you come back when you're better prepared," he said dismissively. He jabbed a thumb toward the door. Shame prickled across Alan's skin. He scooped up his bill and license, noticing a teenage girl at the edge of the lobby aiming her phone at them. She appeared upset by what she was witnessing, and she was capturing it all on video. Head bowed, Alan stepped outside into the chilly air, his heart hammering. So this is how they treat someone who's down and out, he thought. Although he felt stung, he wasn't surprised. He had suspected something like this. Still, seeing it firsthand was sobering. Unbeknownst to him, the teenager with the phone was already sharing the clip online. Within minutes, the footage would spread across social media under titles like "Homeless Man Humiliated at Major Bank." Meanwhile, Alan slumped onto a nearby bench, hands trembling from the cold and the surge of emotions. The first test had shown a glaring problem. Staff who refused to see past appearances. Still disguised, he decided he would visit 2 more Towering Heights branches in different parts of the city. He needed concrete evidence of whether this issue was isolated or widespread. But as he boarded a bus to his next stop, somewhere in the digital realm, the seeds of a viral scandal were already taking root. By the time he reached the second branch, Towering Heights Bank would be the talk of every social feed in town. And Alan, still invisible in his shabby disguise, had no idea what awaited him. Alan was unaware that social media had already erupted in fury over his experience. Seated in the back of a rattling city bus, he kept his attention on the next branch of Towering Heights Bank he planned to visit. He needed more evidence. One bad interaction might be chalked up to a single manager's prejudice. But if a pattern existed, then the bank's culture required a serious overhaul. The bus hissed to a stop in a neighborhood where gleaming new condominiums stood beside older brick apartments. Alan hopped off, glancing at the wide windows of another Towering Heights branch across the street. His heart thudded with each step. He tucked his chin lower into his threadbare jacket, trying to look the part. Unlike the downtown branch, this location was smaller, with fewer customers inside. A modest sign hung over tidy gray doors. Alan inhaled a steadying breath before stepping in. Immediately, a young teller with bright orange hair offered him a friendly smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" she asked in a cheerful voice. Alan was momentarily taken aback by her warmth. "I'd like to open a checking account," Alan said, once again placing the same battered $20 bill on the counter. "Sure," the teller replied. Her name tag read Macy. She glanced at the money, but her smile didn't waver. "We usually have a $100 minimum deposit, but I can check if there's a promotional account available that might let you open one for less." Alan felt a spark of hope. He was about to respond when a middle-aged man wearing a Towering Heights suit stepped over, a hint of annoyance on his face. Alan guessed he was the branch manager. "Macy, may I speak with you for a moment?" the manager asked curtly, motioning her away. They retreated to a corner of the lobby, speaking in hushed tones. Though he couldn't hear the full conversation, Alan caught fragments. "Minimum deposit, not a charity. Call security if." Macy nodded meekly. When she returned, her cheerful demeanor had faded. "Sir, I'm sorry, but our system can't process such a low starting balance." Her eyes flicked downward. "Manager's orders." Despite the frustration rising in him, Alan simply nodded. "I understand," he said quietly. "Could you at least give me information on any special accounts?" Macy opened her mouth to answer, but the manager suddenly barked, "Macy, don't waste any more time. Next customer, please." Her cheeks tinged pink, and she mouthed "I'm sorry" to Alan. Alan stepped away from the counter, shoulders sagging. Though Macy had tried to help, the manager's overriding stance was crystal clear. With no other options, Alan made for the exit, noticing for the second time that bystander, someone seated in the waiting area, had a phone aimed in his direction. Is this happening again? He wondered. The uneasy thought followed him into the crisp sunlight outside. He didn't realize that, within minutes, another social media post would join the growing wave of footage. Homeless man rejected by bank, again. Each clip told a piece of Alan's story, with outraged viewers piecing the videos together to discover it was the same man facing rejection at different branches of Towering Heights Bank. Alan walked a few blocks to clear his mind. A new sense of urgency filled him. 2 branches had shown him the door, one with outright hostility, the other with forced politeness canceled by a manager's directive. Could this be the norm? He wondered grimly. His phone vibrated, snapping him from his thoughts. Digging it out from a hidden pocket, he noticed repeated missed calls from Bianca, his personal assistant. He slipped into a quiet alley to avoid prying eyes and answered. "Alan," Bianca nearly shouted, voice shaking. "Where are you?" "The main office is in chaos." "What do you mean?" he asked in a hushed tone. "It's all over social media. People are sharing videos of a homeless man getting turned away at 2 of our branches. Public backlash is exploding. TV stations keep calling for a statement." Ellen closed his eyes, inhaling slowly. "That homeless man is me," he reminded her gently. Bianca let out a long exhale. "I know, but the board doesn't. They're demanding answers. Some executives think the footage was staged by activists targeting our brand." She paused. "What are you going to do?" Alan stared at the scuffed toes of his sneakers. "I'm collecting more evidence. Today, I'm going to a 3rd branch, maybe even a 4th. I need a complete picture. Tell the board to remain calm. I'll deal with it." Bianca hesitated. "Alan, a bigger storm is brewing. Journalists and bloggers are picking this up. A major influencer posted the videos, calling our bank inhumane." Alan's chest tightened. He realized the damage wasn't just about a few employees' attitudes. It might soon devastate the bank's public reputation. Yet a small flame of resolve also burned in him. This is an opportunity, he thought. If the public outrage forced the bank to face hard truths, maybe meaningful change could happen. He said goodbye to Bianca and ended the call. The city's noise wrapped around him, horns blaring, pedestrians chattering. The next few hours would be critical. Gripping his old jacket close, Alan prepared to visit another Towering Heights location. Let the videos spread, he told himself. Let the world see what's really happening here. With a final glance at the phone screen, filled with messages of concern, he stepped back into the bustling streets. Section by section, the dominoes were falling, and soon the entire bank would feel the tremors of what had begun as one man's undercover quest for the truth. Sunlight warmed Alan's shoulders as he approached the third Towering Heights bank location, this time in a suburban strip mall. The architecture was modest, plain glass doors, a few potted plants, nothing fancy. Still in his ragged disguise, Alan felt an odd mix of dread and determination. 2 branches had thrown him out, and social media was turning him into a viral spectacle. But he needed one more encounter to confirm that the problem was systemic. He slipped inside, heart pounding. A pair of customers stood in line. No security guard rushed to intercept him this time, which felt oddly refreshing. The interior was smaller, with cozy chairs and a single teller behind the counter. An older woman with silver-streaked hair, a sign on the wall read, "We care about our community." The sentiment made Alan's stomach clench after what he'd experienced. The teller finished serving a young mother, then turned to Alan. "Good morning. How can I help you?" she asked warmly, adjusting her glasses. "I'd like to open a checking account." Alan repeated the same line he used before, sliding the same crumpled $20 bill across the counter. She glanced at the bill. "We have a minimum deposit of $100, sweetheart, but maybe I can help." She offered a kind smile. "Is that all you have right now?" Alan nodded. "It's all I can spare," he said, voice subdued. Her gaze softened. "Let's see if we have a community support program." She tapped on her keyboard, looking for alternatives. "There are some special accounts that waive the minimum." She continued typing, scanning the computer screen. Alan felt the flicker of hope, only to see her expression fall. "Our manager must have changed something," she mumbled with a sigh. "It looks like the zero minimum account was discontinued last month." Alan lowered his eyes. "Is there really no other option?" She opened her mouth to respond, but a voice from behind cut her off. "What is he doing here?" A tall, gray-suited woman with a crisp haircut stepped forward, eyes locked on Alan. Her tone carried cold authority. "Mary, is there a problem?" The teller, Mary, glanced nervously at the manager. "I was checking if there's a program he qualifies for." The manager's lips thinned. "There isn't one," she said. "We phased out all low-balance accounts. If he can't meet the standard deposit requirement, he doesn't qualify." Her gaze flicked to Alan. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to take your business elsewhere." Alan stood rooted, feeling an unsettling mixture of anger and disappointment. Mary looked at him apologetically, then gave the manager a pleading look. But the manager merely shook her head, a silent order to end the conversation. With effort, Alan swallowed his frustration. "All right, I'll go," he said softly. He turned only to notice a cluster of customers in the waiting area. One of them had his phone out, capturing the exchange. Once again, Alan felt the awkward sting of being recorded. The manager's sharp gaze followed the customer's phone, then shifted back to Alan with a hint of alarm. Alan left the bank, stepping back into the suburban sprawl. He'd hoped maybe one branch would defy the pattern, but for the third time, he was denied basic help. Leaning against the trunk of a tree near the parking lot, he exhaled shakily. So this is how they treat people who seem poor at Towering Heights Bank, he thought grimly. The first 2 experiences might have been flukes, but now a grim consistency was emerging. Before he could dwell on the moment, Bianca's ringtone blasted through his phone again. He moved behind the tree, ensuring no one overheard. "Bianca, I'm outside the 3rd branch," he answered. "Alan, the board is freaking out. The videos are going viral faster than wildfire. We got morning talk shows covering them. Everyone wants to know why Towering Heights is turning away homeless people in such a callous manner." Alan closed his eyes, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "I just saw a 3rd branch treat me the same way," he muttered. "No help, no compassion. It's definitely not isolated." Bianca paused. "Then you need to come back right now. The board demands a crisis meeting this afternoon." A swirl of questions flooded Alan's mind. Should I continue gathering evidence, or head back and confront the executives with what I have? After everything he'd seen, the bigger truth was impossible to deny. Towering Heights wasn't the empathetic institution he'd imagined. Public trust was disintegrating by the hour. "All right," Alan said finally, "tell them I'm on my way." Tucking his phone into his pocket, he quickly hopped on a nearby bus. On the ride to the corporate headquarters, Alan's mind churned with conflicting emotions. Anger at the bank's coldness, guilt that he'd let things spiral, determination to fix it. He also felt a pinch of fear. He wasn't just a random employee. He was the CEO. The board would question his methods, but they'd also blame him for letting this issue escalate into a PR disaster. When the bus pulled up to Towering Heights' towering glass office building, it felt surreal. Approaching the grand lobby in his ragged clothes, he received more scornful stares. But as soon as the security team recognized him, some from personal acquaintance, they stood aside in confusion. "Mr. Fairchild?" one guard murmured, astonished to see the CEO looking like he had just crawled out of a shelter. Alan offered only a curt nod and headed straight for the executive elevator. Inside the elevator's gleaming mirror, he saw the reflection of a man who had learned too much in too short a time. 3 separate branches, the same rejection, the same coldness. Now social media was exploding. He felt an unfamiliar trembling in his legs. Yet whatever awaited him in the boardroom, he couldn't ignore the truth. Towering Heights had failed, and he, as the CEO, had to make it right. If not for the bank, then for everyone out there who actually lived this daily reality with no safety net. Ding. The doors slid open to a marble hallway leading to the executive suite. Bracing himself, Alan stepped forward, silently preparing to confront his own leadership and the crisis that threatened to tear the bank apart. Alan stepped off the executive elevator onto a marble-floored corridor that seemed worlds away from the shabby branches he had visited just hours earlier. His worn jeans and threadbare jacket looked absurd against the gleaming decor. But he didn't slow down or try to change. He marched forward until he reached an imposing set of double doors that led to the boardroom of Towering Heights Bank. Inside, the board of directors and a handful of high-ranking managers sat around a massive, polished table. Their faces reflected shock at the sight of their own CEO dressed as if he'd slept on the sidewalk. Murmurs and uncomfortable fidgets rippled through the room. Bianca stood in the corner, eyes flickering with anxiety. Chairman Roland Montgomery, an older man with graying hair, cleared his throat. "Alan, what on earth?" He trailed off, struggling to find the right words. Alan planted his palms on the table, ignoring the tension. "I'm sure you've all seen the videos," he said, sweeping his gaze across the group. "The homeless man turned away at 3 of our branches was me. I've been undercover for the past day, testing how our employees treat people on the margins." A wave of gasps spread through the board members. One woman in a tailored blue suit raised a shaky hand. "But why? You could have just asked for a compliance report." Alan shook his head. "Reports aren't enough. The complaints we get are real. Low-income customers, homeless individuals, anyone who looks different. Some branches treat them like dirt. I saw it firsthand." Roland's lips tightened. "Do you realize the chaos you caused? We're being bombarded with media requests. The press is labeling us as heartless. Our stock price dropped 10% in the last 2 hours." Alan pressed his jaw tight. "Yes, I realize that. I also realize that we deserve it. We failed, Roland. We all talk about community values, but in practice, we're turning away those who need our help the most." An uncomfortable silence draped the room. A few executives exchanged uneasy glances. The head of public relations piped up, voice trembling, "We can release an apology and promise training." "Will that contain the damage?" "No," Alan said firmly. "A standard PR apology won't fix this. We need real action, new programs, staff retraining, and an end to absurd account requirements that shut out people with limited funds." Some of the directors looked unconvinced, but others nodded solemnly. The tension rose as Douglas, the branch manager from the first location, suddenly appeared at the doorway. He had evidently been summoned, looking furious and confused. "What's going on?" he demanded. But the moment he recognized Alan, a flicker of shock registered on his face. Alan turned to him. "I remember you," he said, voice calm but authoritative. "You treated me like I was worthless. You didn't even explain policies or try to help." Douglas tried to splutter a defense. "I was following protocol. We have standards, and if someone can't meet them, we aren't obligated to serve." "I'm not looking for excuses," Alan interrupted. "I'm looking for people who show empathy and find solutions within our guidelines. You did neither." Alan was shaking inside, but he kept his composure. The rest of the board watched, uneasy. Deep down, each of them realized the bank was at a crossroads. Their image was tarnished, but more critically, they'd just discovered how their own culture had rotted in certain places. Roland cleared his throat again. "All right, since we're all here, let's come to a decision about how to move forward." Alan inhaled slowly. He never wanted to humiliate employees or stage a spectacle, but this was bigger than bruised egos. "Effective immediately," he said. We're bringing back the zero minimum checking account. We'll also launch a dedicated program for customers facing financial hardship. That means crisis loans, waived fees, flexible IDs for those who don't have addresses. A wave of murmurs spread through the board. Some looked worried about the potential costs, but others nodded approval. Ellen continued, "Every employee will undergo empathy and inclusivity training within the next month. We'll reward branches that show real compassion and retrain or remove those who can't adapt. No more giving lip service to community values. We live them now or we fail." Douglas and two other branch managers exchanged nervous glances. They knew their casual dismissal of struggling customers was about to be exposed and corrected. Bianca finally spoke up, her voice carrying a sense of relief. "We can't undo what happened to the people who were turned away, but we can do better starting today." Alan's gaze traveled across the table. The public is watching us, so are our customers, current and future. If we don't do the right thing now, Towering Heights Bank might not survive the backlash. A hush followed. Then, one by one, board members voiced their support. Even Roland, who was reluctant at first, nodded. "We'll proceed with your plan, Alan. Let's show everyone we're ready to change." Alan exhaled, feeling a profound sense of gravity. He was CEO, a man entrusted with guiding the bank. For a long time, he had believed in the slogan etched on every company brochure, "Empowering communities." Maybe now they'd truly earned that slogan. He strode toward the window, peering down at the bustling city below. People hurried along sidewalks, each with stories and struggles invisible at a glance. For a moment, he pictured himself stepping out of this skyscraper and back into the shoes of someone who owned barely $1 in the world. Would he be treated with dignity next time? Alan allowed himself a small, hopeful smile. He turned to face the board again, shoulders set. "Let's rebuild Towering Heights into the bank we once promised to be." Together. No one clapped or cheered, but the charged silence told him they understood the weight of what he was asking. Deep inside, Alan believed that everything could change for the better, and this crisis might just be the spark they needed.